Welcome to Beyond Perception, where it's all about breaking out of limited perception on life and discovering truth. And also waking up to our humanness, our true self, and also to our connectedness with all life, including animals. My name is Simon, and my guest today is Skow. He's the founder of Marleys Mutts, with a mission to making a positive and lasting impact on communities by rehabilitating souls and creating second chances using the power of the human-animal bond. And from what I know, since 2009, your team, you have rescued over 5,000 dogs and also initiated the Pawsitive Change program, where it's about creating hope and opportunity for incarcerated people and pets, so both may find a path home. That's a quote on your page. So welcome, Zach. It's really great to be here with you today. Thank you.
Yeah, nice job. Great intro. I'm so good morning to all Americans. Good evening to anyone in Europe.
Exactly. So I want to just provide a brief context, and I have shared this with you before. My wife, Brenda, who is a huge dog lover, she participated in a training with Cesar Milan, who is a well-known dog training authority, a couple of years ago, and met there a few of your team. And since then, we have been following your work closely. However, I didn't really get what it is about. And I just said that my wife has been a dog carer, a lover for really all her life, and she saved stray dogs in Mexico. She's from Mexico originally, and so on. But I didn't really get it, what this dog thing is about, until, and that's what I shared with you, she convinced me last year to have our first doggy, and he is from a shelter. And I can say this little guy, his name is Coco. He not only showed me like what unconditional love really is, but he has been one of the most precious gifts ever, and just in this short amount of time he really transformed my life. And that's also why I can now say, like, I get what it is about. And so I appreciate even more what you're doing, because I can now understand it more, what is which I couldn't before. So what I love to ask you though, have you been always so passionate about dogs, or how did you connect with dogs?
Yeah, that's a good question. I have always been this passionate about animals. I've always been connected to animals. So I grew up at the beach, and always drawn to the water, always drawn to animals in the water. So, always, and then outside of the water, always had dogs. So we started rescuing dogs. My first rescue dog I found on the way home from grade school. It was raining, and his name was Speck. We found him. He was probably a 3 to 4 year old little mutt mixed breed dog, and he was in this rain gutter. Just, he couldn't have looked more pathetic. And so he became our first rescue dog. I think I was 8, 9, something like that. And it changed our life. It changed the whole atmosphere of our home. My dad, who is an engineer and a very hardworking, very uber focused individual, absolutely fell in love with that dog, and it kind of throttled back a lot of the energy in the home, and put a lot of our energy was just moving forward. My dad's an entrepreneur. My brother and I are entrepreneurs. And it kind of really dialed us back more into an emotional state. My dad's not a very emotional person, being an engineer. And this dog unlocked him. Like, it completely opened him up. My dad didn't have a father either. So my dad wasn't graced with that knowledge and love of a father. He had to kind of come up with it on his own. So the bond that he developed with our dog Speck was incredible. Every night before we go to bed, he'd go underneath the pool table, which is where Speck would lay, and he'd spoon with him. He'd just cuddle with him, and that was his morning or his evening routine with our dog. My parents divorced when we were very young, so we did the same thing at my mom's house. We had rescue dogs. We had some dogs that my mom got from a breeder when we were younger, a couple of golden retrievers. But I've always been drawn to animals. I used to do this routine where I'd take my skateboard and my tennis racket and my dog, and my dad's neighborhood, which was an equine neighborhood. So a lot of parks and a lot of horses all over the place. So I would just take my dog off leash and my skateboard, and we would just go all over the neighborhoods and feed, there's a lot of fruit trees too. So just feed fruit to different people's horses. I would just trespass all over the place into different people's homes. And so it was just a little kid, and, it's non-threatening. It's just a little kid and his dog. And I'd go through my whole neighborhood and just interacting with different people's dogs and their horses and whatever else. And then when it comes to rescue, my mom took back to the shelter 2 of our dogs during my lifetime. And I remember when I came home and asked, where's Bentley? His name is Bentley. And my mom had taken him back to the shelter. And I remember being crushed by that. And I remember not understanding it. And I think part of my drive to rescue dogs in adulthood is to make up for some of those 2 dogs that we sent back to the pound when I was a kid. But yeah, I mean, I've always been very interested in rescue, and I got heavily involved in rescue before I got sick. So I became an alcoholic probably when I was 16 or 17 and was a heavy drug user. Really most all of my life. I mean, I was heavily addicted to drugs and alcohol for the last 5 years of my non-sobriety. So from 23 to 28, I was drinking 24 hours a day, using as often as I could. But I also, in my life, my perception of life was very, very negative. I was just kind of spiraling, and I had been spiraling since I was a kid, just getting worse and worse and worse and worse. And my last kind of desperate attempt to plug myself into society and try to save myself was to start working in rescue. So 2003, I started volunteering for local rescues through 2004. And that was really great, but it was very self-serving. I was a desperate alcoholic, and I was essentially volunteering just to say I was doing something positive. I had my high school reunion coming up, and when everyone asked, what do you do for a living? I couldn't say I was an alcoholic and an addict, but if I could say that I saved dogs and that I spent my time in shelters and with rescues, then I had something redeeming to say about myself. So I was just very ashamed about where I was in life. And the only thing I didn't feel ashamed about was the work I was doing with animals. So that became a big focus. And then in 2008, was when I got sick, and everything changed then. We can get into that now if you want, or I'll follow you.
So I of course would love to hear about how you got into what you're doing right now. And from what I understand here,
yeah, it was so weird. It's such a strange path to end up as as a professional animal rescuer. I just never in a million years would have thought that's what I would be doing. I would have thought fighter pilot, or advertising executive, or something that related to what my parents did. My dad's a pilot, and my mom was an advertising executive. So those are the things that I knew. I grew up in music, so something with that. But none of those things ever happened. I was a slave to drugs and alcohol. I mean, you can't pursue your dreams or anything close to it when you're enslaved by chemicals. And so I never really got to live the life I was intended until I got sober. There's no bigger waste of human potential than addiction and alcoholism, and it had completely consumed me. I mean, all of my thoughts from sun up to sundown were usually associated with alcohol and drugs, and the pursuit of alcohol and drugs. It really is. There's no better term to describe it than enslavement. You can't pursue the things that you want to pursue. Even some of the basic things for your wellness, they take a back burner to pursuing it just becomes your life. It became my only way to survive was alcohol specifically. I couldn't tolerate being awake and sober. It was physically painful. It was emotionally painful. It was, spiritually, I don't think I had a leg to stand on. And I mean, I was working when I got sick, I was working at the Improv, the comedy club. And I left there because I was really got bad in terms of drugs and alcohol. I mean, I was specifically drugs. And when I came, I kind of tucked my tail between my legs and came home to be with my dad here in California. And that's when my body started to give in, you know, so I started to turn yellow, started to swell in my stomach. And you know, I'm a 5'11", 175-pound person. And I was just getting very skinny. I couldn't eat. I was developing this gigantic belly that just kept swelling and getting bigger. And I could hear all this fluid. It's called ascites is what the condition is called. And it develops when fluid builds up in your abdominal cavity because your liver or your kidneys aren't working. And so I started to get really sick. I started to bleed from my mouth and from my bum. And I knew that something had happened related to alcohol, but I couldn't face the idea of having to eliminate alcohol from my life. So I would just sit out like, and I really looked terrible. I mean, I was bright. I was really yellow, and I was bruised everywhere, and like on my face, my eyes were really just totally yellow, sunk in. And I finally went to the doctor because it was difficult to hide. And the doctor said, you know, it was a nurse that came out. She sat down with me and said, "You're in liver failure and you need to go to a hospital immediately." And she was like teary. She was emotional. And I was like, what do you mean? And she reiterated, she said, "Look, you're dying of liver failure. And if you don't deal with this right now, you know, you're not going to make it." So I left that appointment and told my dad, instead of telling him the truth, I told him nothing was wrong. I just told him they advised to stop drinking hard alcohol, stop using drugs, but to drink wine with dinner and all that kind of stuff. Beer was okay, just completely lied. And tried to keep the charade going for a couple more months. And then I got really, really ill to the point where I couldn't hide it anymore. And I got admitted to the hospital. I didn't have health insurance either. So I got admitted to the hospital August 3rd, 2008. And they admitted me for long-term care. And I'll never forget it. The first thing that happened was the doctor came in and sat down with my dad next to my bed. And he said, "Your son needs a liver transplant and he's not going to get one. I don't know what to tell you, but he's very ill. He's in liver failure. And the only thing that's going to save his life is a transplant. And he can't qualify for one. So this is where we are, you know?" And so they set to giving me blood transfusions, frozen plasma transfusions, trying to get biopsies, but I was so ill. They couldn't perform biopsies on me. They couldn't open me up. They could only drain my stomach, this huge thing. So they cut a hole in my back, stick a vacuum tube in there and suck out all of this bile and blood that was accumulating in my body. And when you're in liver failure, you know, everything fails. Your gallbladder, your pancreas, your kidneys, like everything goes. And so my kidneys, I had some severe kidney problems and I was going through alcohol withdrawal. So the first week in the hospital, I remember virtually nothing. And then after that, I got addicted to drugs for the rest of the time I was in the hospital. I remember like a fleeting moment of realizing that I hadn't drank in a week and being proud of that. Like, holy cow, you know, I've never not had alcohol. I hadn't gone 6 hours without alcohol, much less 6 days. And then I remember feeling that somewhat of a sense of pride. And then I just remember needing drugs. You know, they were giving me morphine and then Dilaudid. And so that's all I asked for. And I got that every 3 hours and became a slave to that. And that made me even sicker and even sicker and even sicker. And I wasn't eating. And I was in a hospital that didn't do transplants. So I was just dying. And they wanted to send me home on hospice care and were doing everything they could to get me out of there. They just didn't. They wanted me home with my family where I could die with dignity. And then one day in my room, you know, there was some guys from Alcoholics Anonymous. I kind of woke up and there were these guys there talking about sobriety and talking about how he had gotten through liver failure in prison. And here I was in a hospital on the outside. And that was the first real sign of hope for us is, you know, recovery folks came and were there for me and tried to help in any way they could. And it really planted the seed of sobriety in my mind. And those guys really never left. The main one, Kevin, he became my Eskimo, which means he was the person that introduced me to sobriety. And yeah, we're still close. So that was a really remarkable a really remarkable time in my life because, I was completely helpless and I was dying and there's nothing I could do to change it. And I didn't qualify for a liver transplant. You needed 6 months of sobriety. I needed to get 6 months, and they'd given me less than 90 days to live. So I had less than 90 days to live and I needed 6 months. And so it was just a really tough spot and we had no hope. And when those guys came in and that dude who was in liver failure standing at my bed, that was a huge shot in the arm for our family. And it really gave my dad a lot of hope that we could find a solution. And so he just worked the phones and worked. He's an engineer. So his mind takes in a problem and he's going to spit out an answer. He's going to crunch the numbers and take in all the variables and he's going to come up with a solution. And that's what happened. I got, long story short, I finally got admitted to the comprehensive transplant program at Cedars-Sinai, which is the best hospital in America or close to it. And that was also the hospital I was born at. And so one day, my dad said, all right, we got your appointment at Cedars. Start pulling the shit off your arms. And the doctors at the hospital are saying, you can't leave here. He's gravely ill. You can't leave this hospital. And he's saying, bullshit. We can't leave this hospital. I am taking him to Cedars-Sinai to get him in that transplant program. And I don't, so we had to sign me out against doctor's orders and they put all my shit in a bag and we hit the road and we went to Cedars. I met with Dr. Tram Tran, the head of the transplant team, and they admitted me to the program. So I became a comprehensive transplant patient that day. They sent me home from the hospital because they knew the hospital would kill me, that the drugs I'd become addicted to would take my life. So they sent me home and said, look, you're going to need to go through withdrawals and stay close to a hospital. And, if you can survive 6 months, you'll get the transplant you need. And so that was a big deal. But then as soon as I got home, I went through withdrawals and like the ceiling came crashing in. I went through just the withdrawals almost killed me. I was so ill and I was seeing things that weren't there. I was hearing things that weren't there. I've never had more of an emotionally volatile state where I just wanted to kill myself, like where you just want a way out. And, I'm used to coping with alcohol. So I didn't have alcohol to cope with. I didn't have drugs to cope with. I'm physically going through withdrawals and it was just terrible. And my dogs were in bed with me and just having them in bed where I could anchor myself to their bodies and their energy was just incredibly helpful to me because I thought I was losing my mind. I thought I was dying. I was dying, and just having their presence was very important to me. So I got through withdrawal and, long story short, it's a long story. We would get stuck in the woods trying to go through all of it. But yeah, the first big step that happened was my rescue dogs helping me get through that. And really it was a issue of combating suicidal thoughts from that point on. I just didn't think I fit in the world. I just thought I was terrible at living. I was affected a lot of people negatively. I really hurt my family. And I just didn't think I was any good at life. I thought I was just bad at this and that the best thing for me to do would be to take my own life. And one morning I'd gone to the bathroom in bed. I'd pooped myself and I didn't want to wake my dad up to have to come clean me up again. He'd done it several times. And just remember walking through my bathroom mirror and catching a glimpse of myself, and I was naked and shitty and just crying, man, just really being devastated, like recognizing who I'd become and what I was. And just, it's hard to explain how low of a feeling that is, where you don't recognize who you've become, or where you have like a good person in here that is, I've always known I was a good person. I always knew I had a deep drive to be a good person and to help people and to create positivity in the world. And I just become such a negative entity. I have such a pathetic existence that I just I wanted out. I just really wanted out, and I looked down at my dogs while I'm like just crying and really suffering. I mean, I was having such a bad moment where I didn't recognize myself, who I was looking at. And I just I didn't know where to go. And I looked down at my dogs and they were so content. They were all just looking at me like nothing was wrong. Like dad was going to be okay. And that not only that dad was I okay, that I was already okay. They were all looking up at me like it was just a normal day and everything was perfectly fine. And I was the shit and they loved me and I was incredible and beautiful and handsome and they could see my heart so I'm looking at me and I'm seeing this pathetic, terrible, dead, no future, awful human being. And they're looking up at me and seeing the complete opposite, and I could just see it in their faces. Like you said, like you talked about with your dog, they blanket you with this love that you can't, you have to be dead not to, acknowledge. It's just a blinding, affection. And sometimes we can write off dogs as like, they're just programmed for that. That's what they're supposed to do, is give us love. But my dogs in particular, I had such a bond with. We go back, we had such an incredible experience together that it was just really important. Their acknowledgement, their family, and so their acknowledgement of who I was and the idea that I was still in here was really important. And that was kind of the catalyst for the rest of my life. Was the next day I made a commitment to sobriety and really focused on walking my dogs, writing about what I was experiencing, trying to put my fears on paper, trying to experience a power greater than myself. So I would watch the sunrise every morning. I made it a pattern to wake up, watch the sunrise, go walk my dogs, try to connect with something greater than me, because I was just in here, trapped in here. Not even any of this, just fear. And I mean, I was scared of everything, people, places, things, everything. And it really helped me get out of that. It really helped me discover a divinity, just being out in nature with my dogs, walking, breathing, practicing being alive, sober, and it was, that became our routine. And then pretty soon thereafter, 2 months later, I was getting so much better physically. I got really bad and then I started to improve, and I was going down to Cedars every week for checkups. And they just kept saying, we don't know what you're doing, man, but keep doing what you're doing, because this is remarkable. Your numbers are going down. And I had end stage liver disease. It's called end, not fourth stage or level 4. It's end, END. Like you either die, it's the end. You either die or you get a transplant. Those are your options. And so it became really interesting. They let me know that I wasn't necessarily dying and that I might have some hope, and that if I kept doing what I was doing, I might survive or I might become eligible for my transplant. And so we kept it up, and I radically changed my diet, radically for 2 years, no salt, just chicken and vegetables, walking every day, exercising and walking. I could barely walk when I started. Walking became hiking, became jogging, became stair climber, became running. And all of a sudden, 6 months, I have my 6 months. I get 6 months of sobriety. I go down there for Cedars for my big review, and they basically say like, well, again, we don't know how the fuck you did this, but you're not dying anymore. And your liver numbers are actually low enough you're not even transplant eligible. So I couldn't get a transplant if I wanted one, even though I qualified because I'd been sober for 6 months. I wasn't sick enough. My liver was improving and my pancreas was improving and my gallbladder was, all of those things were improving. And that really was that was how Marleys Mutts started, was just adding dogs to my pack, walking with them every morning, integrating them in with my rescue dogs. And then I started to get creative. I started to sit in front of the computer and write up their stories, right? So if it was like a German short-haired pointer, right? If the dog was a German short-haired pointer, I'd say he was from Frankfurt, right? And he loved Hefeweizen and Schnitzel, and like write these ridiculous stories about these dogs to give them a personality,
Yeah.
And this was before social media. So I would just do posters. I was volunteering for those other rescue organizations, and it was great. It just gave me all this purpose. I got to get creative with the pictures and making their adoption posters, and started getting them adopted. So I started meeting a lot more people. I was bringing my dog out into the world. He was my therapy dog, and I started speaking at schools, started speaking at institutions, sober livings, rehab facilities, prisons, jails, My old high school, I would go to regularly and give assemblies. So it really became this big deal where I was really, through dogs, I was really facing my fears. I was getting out into the public, I was talking and I was sharing my experience and I was sharing my fears, and it became totally transformative. A lot of people related to me. I didn't know that many people had dealt with liver issues and alcohol related liver failure and death. And so I got heavily involved in that community and helping other people in liver failure try to better themselves and nutritionally and physically, beat the predicament that they're in. So yeah, it was very organic, very natural how Marleys Mutts developed. And so by the end of that next summer, 2009, I incorporated Marleys Mutts. It became an organization, and the whole community was saying, yeah, you should become a dog rescuer. That's what you should do. I'm like, a what? Like a professional dog rescuer? She goes, yeah, you should start a dog rescue. I'm going, that's not what people do. Like, I'm just a drunk. I'm a recovering drunk and liver failure. You want me to start a nonprofit organization? Like, they'll never let me do that. I was convinced that the state of California and the federal government would never let a drunk like me start a nonprofit organization. Like, I just thought that wasn't allowed. Sure, it's allowed, And so, yeah, I'll never forget that when the government came back and approved our nonprofit status, and it's been nonstop ever since. We have a bunch of different programs, revolving around the human-animal bond. One's called Miracle Mutts, which is our therapy program. Those dogs are out in our community all the time, rendering therapy in all kinds of environments. There's really no environment. It's really like wherever dogs can help people's mental state. So like at schools for finals, we send our dogs to school so that in between finals, kids can go pet on the dogs and just decompress. And we send them to cancer centers where people are receiving. We send them to sober livings and homeless centers, and really anywhere that these dogs can help light up people's lives. And then we started Pawsitive Change back in 2015, 2016. So that's a comprehensive inmate canine training program. That program is active in 6 prisons here in California and 1 girls' juvenile facility. And we've graduated something like 600 dogs 400 dogs and 600 inmates. It's been really incredible. I mean, it is the thing I'm most passionate about. I really found my calling when I found dog rescue. And then I really plugged into my purpose working with dogs. It really helped introduce me to the world. And then I found advocating for the incarcerated. People very much like me who had substance abuse problems, alcohol problems, self-hatred problems. I just very much relate to their struggle. And my community believed in me when they shouldn't have, and they gave me a second chance, and I'm alive because of it. And I just feel like, there's 2.5 million incarcerated people in the United States. We're only 4% of the global population, but we incarcerate 25% of the world's human beings. It's astonishing how we warehouse human beings. And I really view those individuals as untapped potential. These are just human beings, most of them incarcerated at a very young age, and none of their potential is ever realized, and they're never really given a shot at 1, redemption, and 2, at a real life of love and acceptance. And I can't imagine as a person, or to be identified as an inmate is to be identified as someone who never will be accepted. And I just think that's so unfair. I think that's so fucking unfair. Us addicts and alcoholics, like, we're accepted now more than ever in our society. Before, when I first got sober, most people didn't talk about being sober, because you would get judged to be an alcoholic or an addict, and that wasn't a good thing. It's the thing I'm most proud of, by the way, to acknowledge that I'm an alcoholic and a drug addict. It is the thing I am most proud of, because it's the one variable in my life that could kill me. Or not the one, but it's the one that should have killed me and will kill me. And I love that I've been able to identify what was killing me, to work out that process, and in turn be introduced to an entire fellowship of people who prioritize sobriety. Like, that's the other incredible thing about this journey, outside from dogs, is that I've gotten introduced to a whole group of people who are just like me. And I thought I was fucking unique. I thought I was very special in my addictions and my alcoholism. Like I was incurable. Like there was nobody as fucked up as me, you know? And this is an issue that a lot of people in early recovery have. And it turns out I'm not unique. I'm just as fucked up as a whole lot of other people. And I found this incredible group that I now get to embed myself with, who are focused on the same things, you know, learning to cope in life without alcohol or drugs. So yeah, it's been a crazy journey, man. It really has. It's been incredible. And yeah, we're just trying to create as much positivity in this world as we can. And what I really value is helping take people outside of the trappings of their own mind and plug them into service. So one of the coolest things about rescue and animals is that you're being of service to something that can't serve itself. And in that service, you can plug into your own purpose. You're rewarding yourself for selfless acts. And for people like me who are very hateful very naturally hateful of myself, you know, to be able to acknowledge good things that I've done or that I'm doing is really important for me to be okay with me, you know? So it's really been a remarkable journey that is, that I feel very lucky to have been introduced to, you know? I should have died in 2008 and I didn't. And I'm talking to you instead.
Yeah, thank you for sharing your life, your story with us. And
Yeah.
it seems that you got a second chance to life, and that's what you're also providing to others now, to animals and incarcerated people who are less fortunate, and you kind
Yeah.
of the one believing in them or seeing them and
Yeah.
like enabling them to get another chance in life.
Yeah. You just said the word believing in, now that I'm a dad, and I understand when you become a dad, you become aware of all the things your dad did that are not good.
Yeah,
You become aware of all the patterns that your parents did that you don't want to recreate, you know, which is very interesting. And so for me as a dad of two little girls now, I have a 3.5-year-old and a 1-year-old. My focus is on believing in people, is on instilling self-esteem, trying to instill self-esteem.
So my question is, no, and you mentioned this just by what you said, is like, especially with incarcerated people, there's so much prejudice, right? Like they label, they're like, they don't deserve another chance, possibly they are criminals or whatever. Would you say that everybody deserves another chance, or that in everybody is this innate humanness or that sleeping potential who can
Absolutely, man. I mean,
awaken?
yes, I definitely believe that the vast majority of people have innate goodness, that they are inherently good. You know, obviously a lot of us deal with trauma, which can lead us astray, and we deal with, you know, lack of ability to cope. One of the things that's tough for people with dealing with the incarcerated is that they look a certain way. You know, they're in prison, so they're heavily tattooed.
Frightening.
Yeah, frightening. They work out constantly, and so they're imposing, you know, very intimidating, imposing. And just the frequency of a prison, walking into a maximum security prison in California is something that would blow you guys away. You know, first of all, it's segregated. So I'm sure prisons in Germany are segregated, or in Switzerland, if there even are prisons in Switzerland. Prisons in Germany, they're probably segregated too. You probably have Turkish, you probably have Syrian, you probably have Germans, you probably have some level of segregation. But in California prisons, it's completely segregated. You know, Hispanics, blacks, whites, others, they are not intermingling. So it's just a heavy atmosphere. Everything about prison is heavy, and it's very negative. But there are a lot of people in prison. Well, let me back up. So the vast majority of our students, I know most of their circumstances, and they come from broken homes. They come from the juvenile detention system. They come from gang life. They're socioeconomically coming from very poor rungs of American society. So there's a constant theme, a very consistent theme with most of the violent offenders that are our students. And that theme is very little parental involvement. Most of them come from households without dads. Lots of drug use and alcohol use in the home. Abuse, physical abuse, emotional abuse. all kinds of, and a lot of these guys were incarcerated as youth. So they've been in prison, the prison system their whole lives. And once you're in that system, it becomes outrageously difficult to get out. It's impossible to gain employment. You can't be hired at most places if you're a felon. They won't allow you, which is incredible to me that you've paid your, imagine being incarcerated for 20 years. Imagine spending 20 years, your whole adult life in prison, and then getting out and not being able to provide for your family or yourself, and leaving you the only option of going back to a life of crime, which therefore lands you back in prison. So 70% of American, prisoners end up back in prison. 70%. That's the recidivism rate, which is astonishing. Like, that's just terrible. And it costs more to incarcerate one person in California for a year than I get paid. So it costs $83,000 a year to lock up one person in California. That's more than I make annually. And it just doesn't make
right.
it's incredible. I just don't understand. The prison industrial complex is a very real thing, and there's a lot of things that feed into it. But going back to your assessment that the incarcerated are very prejudiced, I can't imagine facing that. This idea that everybody on the outside in America thinks less of you, and that's really what they believe. Guys who are, most of our society thinks less of the incarcerated. And because of that, the incarcerated think less of themselves. They acknowledge themselves as being less than in many cases. So the last thing they need is less self-confidence. They're going to get out of prison. They need self-confidence. They need to believe in themselves. They need to have some modicum of love for themselves. And that's what we get to do. And that's my favorite thing to do. There's simply no human experience better that will make you feel more plugged into spirituality, to life, to human beings, to a spiritual sense of living than when you help someone believe in themselves, like help someone recognize that they have the ability to be good and that they are good, and to watch that, to be another man, acknowledging another man's humanity and that he has potential. It's very strange because I'm these guys' age in many cases. But yeah, it's one of the best things in the world to get to do that, to get to believe in somebody and in turn help them believe in themselves.
And that's exactly what your program is intending to achieve.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Could you?
Yeah.
I'm not sure that everybody who's listening to this is familiar with how that program works. Could you briefly explain?
Sure.
What is
Yeah.
that?
So we take dogs from high kill in the United States of America. We still euthanize millions of animals a year. So in the United States, we have so many stray dogs and so many dogs that are being purchased and then surrendered at shelters that we're euthanizing millions a year. We take dogs from the shelter. We bring them either to our rescue ranch or put them in a foster home, and then just to get vaccinated, to go through their medical checks, to get spayed or neutered, and then they go to prison. And they live in prison. It's a 14-week-long program. We do 2 weeks of getting used to the dogs, just getting used to most of these guys haven't seen a dog in a very long time, and in many cases, the last time they saw a dog was when they were apprehended as a police dog. So there's a lot happening. So the dogs go into prison for 12 full weeks, for 3 full months. They live there. They're training 14 hours a day. There are 3 handlers per dog. So a lot of guys are going to school in prison. They're working. They have different schedules. So that's why we have 3 inmates, 3 guys per 1 dog, and they team up. And it's always outside of the race. So we'll have.
Well, they have to cooperate, right?
Yeah, black guy, white guy, Hispanic guys, and they got to work together. And it's just a beautiful thing. They really, it gives them a purpose. So we're trying to help them understand that they're not inmates. They're not prisoners while they're in our program. They're dog rescuers and dog trainers. And just giving them that designation as something other than a prisoner. You got to understand, correctional officers don't shake their hands. They give no affection. People aren't allowed to touch them, hug them. A lot of that stuff is weakness in prison. So there's no enrichment. There's no emotional enrichment. That's one of the greatest things about our program is that it takes place in the prison. Most programs in prison are in a classroom. So they're in an administration building away from where all the inmates are. Our program is smack dab in the middle of the yard and in the middle of the pond. So that's where we're training, where we're surrounded by people at all times. And therefore our program affects the energy of the whole facility. So drug dealing goes down, it's just inherently more positive. There's less incidents. There's more cooperation with staff. There's more cooperation between one another. And so it really affects, also there's usually a painting. So whatever area of the prison we work at, there's a huge mural with the dogs that says Pawsitive Change. So just the whole effect of the program is extremely positive.
That influences, impacts people who are even not directly involved with the program. So there is a secondary effect from doing that.
Yeah, exactly. It affects the energy of the whole prison, because prison's a really dark place. I mean, it like kicks you in the chest when you walk in and you see 1,000 guys on the yard or 800 guys on the yard working out, all shirts off and all that. You go, whoa, shit. It's a whew. And it's a heavy energy, because it's just a bunch of men who got to be tough, and they're projecting that machismo, that aggression, that manliness. So everybody's projecting that. So it's just a heavy vibe. So we go in there with high fives and hugs, and it just really helps shift things, and it helps we're really seeking to provide a healthy emotional space for guys to talk about what they're experiencing. Because the biggest thing about the program and why there's so much internal work is that the leash, we're asking these guys to rehabilitate these dogs. Rehabilitating a scared shelter dog means you have to understand what you're experiencing. If I say we had a really shitty interview and this went terribly and I got off this and I was so frustrated, and then I went out and walked my dog. All of that frustration, all of that disappointment in myself, all of that anger, whatever, is being channeled through that leash into my dog. Mm-hmm. The tension of it's an umbilical cord. So what we teach in there is that if you have to pause, breathe, check in with yourself, become aware with what you're experiencing. Am I tired? Am I lonely? Am I angry? Am I upset at my wife? Am I having a tough time with this or that? Really acknowledge where you're checking in at so that you can address it accordingly. And that if your energy isn't proper, pass it off to your teammate so that he can take the leash for that moment while you talk about what you're experiencing. So a lot of it's like, it has to do with that. And that's why it's so transformative. It gives them an opportunity to acknowledge their emotions. Most times in prison, guys don't acknowledge what they're feeling. It's interpreted as weakness. And so I go in there very feely. I'm always feeling, and I'm never shy about talking about what I'm feeling. So I'll go in there and I'll just talk about my life. I'll just be like, this is happening and fucking this is happening. And God damn it. And I'm having a hard time. And what it gives them the opportunity to do is then be there for me. And so many of those guys have been there for me when I needed them. We had someone try and cancel me. We had a former employee basically edit a video and tried to cancel me, tried to, sent it to every news station, this edited video. And it was awful, man. We got death threats for like a full year. My wife's business got called regularly. The police came to my house. They came to the rescue. They came to our events. I mean, more death threats than I can count. I'm talking like dozens and dozens. And I didn't know what to do. I was really, really scared. And I would bring it into prison and just kind of set it free there. And those guys were there for me in such a big way. And what was interesting is none of their responses had to do with violence. None of them were like, oh, someone's fucking with you? Well, don't worry, we'll take care of it. It was nothing like that. It wasn't what you would expect from the incarcerated. Instead, they really put their arms around me as brothers and said, hey, man, we're here for you. I hear you. And maybe try thinking about it this way. Or have you been meditating on it? Or have you been processing what's the reality from what your mind is creating? Just really incredible advice, because these guys have been locked up for, many of them, for 20, 30 years. And so they have to learn how to cope with what's happening, because they're in prison, they're locked up, their options are very limited. So it's just, we've one of the coolest things about the program is that it's a dog training program, right? but it's also a very deep, integrated, emotional, spiritual program that helps people believe in one another and helps people be there for one another and helps break prejudices and stigmas. And it's really just constantly evolving. And I think it's always going to evolve. So I think we're just always going to try to make it better. And yeah, I really firmly believe it's really impressive to get through a long prison sentence in a prison in California and get out. For you to make it through 20 years, it shows something about who you are. If you can get through that with your dignity intact, with your humanity intact, and be honorable, you really have a lot to offer this world, because, people are forged through suffering. And there aren't many people who suffer less than those who are locked up in California prisons. It is suffering. It is absolute suffering. You would be shocked to just see how a lot of these individuals live, so to be able to, I just fundamentally believe these guys have so much to offer because of what they've been through, and out in the real, in any number of careers. But what we've identified is that these guys are incredible dog trainers and that they can really take their skills out into the real world. So the majority of our students who earn their freedom and are released from prison have become dog trainers and dog rescue employees. And that's the most fulfilling thing for me, is that our program has legitimately changed the trajectory of many, many men's lives in a positive way, and given them a way to generate an income and a living for their families, to grow their families, to get married, to have children, to be redeemed, because many of these guys are legitimately redeemed. Because a lot of our guys have social media accounts, and there's just so much love on these pages. These are guys that, a lot of them served loss of life crimes. They were involved in a loss of life. And for that, may never have been able to make it back into society. And to see them make it back into society, and to see them giving back to so many organizations with the work that they're doing, and to be providing hope and really the role models for so many of our students who are still incarcerated, it's incredible. And most of them are Black and brown men. The dog training world is not a Black and brown men heavy environment. It is mostly white women. I'm not saying that to be negative. That's just a factual observation. The vast majority of people involved in the rescue and dog behavior space are white women. But it's $100 billion economy. The pet industry is $100 billion. That is absolutely enormous. The entire music industry is $35 billion. So it's three times, yeah.
No
three
way.
times
Really?
the size.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay.
The entire American music industry, touring, record sales, all of it is $35 billion. Yeah. So just locking people up in America is three times, So, but that just means there's a ton of opportunity in this space. And because so many people have been adopting rescue dogs, the biggest need are trainers, behavioral modification and training. That's the number one position that is needed within this economy. And that's what our program produces.
Yeah, I've seen quite some of the interviews of participants in your program, and it touches the heart. It's like you see these big tough guys, and then it's like it's almost as they have been kissed alive. So pouring so much love, and like being so thankful for this opportunity, but also when they share about what they learned and how this program changed their way of coping or seeing things. I remember mentioning, how their self-awareness changed, how they were able to break through prejudices about other cultures or races, also gain confidence about that they actually have something to contribute. So
because prison isn't a space where you can be emotional. If you on a normal day in prison go up to your buddy and say, hey, I'm really sad, or if you go up to your buddy and say, hey man, I really love you, and give him a hug, that's just not something that happens in prison.
But you also say that to digest something, or to therapeutic effect, you kind of need to also articulate what is there in terms of emotions. So and that's something I can relate to, because our doggy enabled me to do something similar. in my own kind of experience in life. It provided me an access to something like a really safe environment without any judgment. It was this kind of seeing through my layers of what I thought I am, or what I did wrong, or how bad I am, and kind of like for him, it didn't exist. It was kind of seeing through like who I really am, my essence, and remember myself like to that thing, and that was, I mean, moments of tears and joy, and it was just so a feeling of such relief to be seen.
That's probably the most profound thing you've said, and I never thought about really how that relates to me, but that's exactly what happened to me. Is I discovered my essence because I started working with dogs. I didn't move through the world as a happy-go-lucky person. I just didn't. But I started working with dogs, and I saw the effect that dogs love have on people. Just take a happy-go-lucky dog, right? Take Coros, take Coros, right? She's a happy-go-lucky dog, and you take her and you bring her into any situation, and she's going to make someone just happier. She's going to spread love and make you joyful. But we also have the ability to do that, us human beings. So what my dogs taught me very much so is that I can have the same effect on people that a happy-go-lucky dog does. If I have every person I come in contact with, I can make their day better if I bring that energy, and it really taught me that my essence is that my essence is someone who desires to be connected to people through a mutual experience and to leave a positive streak wherever I go. That's what I'm here to do, is to basically be a happy-go-lucky dog who checks in with as many people as possible and tries to generate positivity in the world. And I don't know that I would have had the guts to kind of become that person unless my dogs guided me towards it,
That's something also what I witness now listening to you, and also from your following your work, is this authenticity or honesty about what's going on. And when I look at like what my dog is teaching me, it is, or in other words, it's a reflection of myself. So if I'm dishonest, if I'm pretending to be confident, kind of like doing as if I would impose something on him or want him to do something, but I actually don't believe that he's doing that, he won't do it. He's very stubborn. You have to be very aligned. You have to believe what you're saying. So it's kind of always, he's mirroring your state. If he's stressed, not because he's stressed, but it's because I'm projecting my stress, or and so
that's exactly what we talk about in there all the time. It's just that
really interesting therapeutic coaching feature having a dog. It's kind of
if it makes you feel any better,
you just have to be authentic, not to do admitting what's going on, and to have this kind of spotlight on your own.
We as human beings have to put masks on all the time. We have to wear these masks to like get through our day. I'm feeling one way, but I got to put on a mask just to get through the day so that people don't know what I'm really feeling. And like you said, your dogs require of you.
You cannot pretend anything.
They require of you that you be genuine in what you're experiencing. Yeah, definitely. It's one of the best things about the human-animal bond is just that. It's exactly.
It's just so there's really
the other thing that I think is important is we oftentimes bring a lot of dogs through prison that are really struggling, and we as human beings have a natural tendency to feel sorry for ourselves, especially people with histories of alcohol and drug abuse, because that was how we got what we needed. Like, right, if you were my brother, I would have come to you over the years for things. While I was in my disease, I would have begged you for money, alcohol, drugs, whatever, all those things. And the way I would have done that is made you feel sorry for me. I would have come to you in this most groveling, like low kind of, to just try to get what I need. And that's a default mechanism for a lot of people, is if I can get you to feel sorry for me, then you'll empathize with me. Then you'll understand me. And dogs just don't do that. They don't feel sorry for themselves. They just don't have, there's a resilience and a drive to move forward. And we get stuck in, like Cora Rose, right? We had to amputate both of her legs. I mean, she broke her back, her legs, her hip, everything, and obviously she doesn't speak English, so we can't complain that way. But I've just never noticed any sort of, she's never backed up. She's always moved forward from it. That incident, that trauma was never something that she said, oh, okay, well, I can't really go on with my life, as I need to, because clearly I don't have any front legs and I had this bad injury. So I'm just going to kind of not really do much of anything. That's not at all what happened with her. What happened with her is, oh shit, well, this happened. I'm going to allow it to better me, to make me an even better dog. And so her experience, like, she became who she was after her injury. I knew her while she still had her legs, and she's a totally different dog. So she's become even more special. She's like this fucking, she's like a unicorn and a rainbow and I don't know, and an alien. She's all kinds of crazy positive things, but she is that because she never felt sorry for herself. She just kept moving forward. And that's a lot what dogs show me as well, is to ignore the tendency to feel sorry for myself and just move forward,
Yeah, it's what I've been talking with my wife about. If you reverse a dog, it actually means God, right? And so there's almost this spiritual component to having a dog. It teaches you, it brings you to the present moment. They are not in the past, they're not in the future. They kind of enjoying what is. Like it's always as if they were to investigate, to see what there is, as if they were there the first time. There's this curiosity, this joy, this excitement, and it radiates very much. So since we have a dog, people are approaching us in a different way. So it's kind of also changing everything around.
I think we experience God's love through dogs. We really do. It's very hard for me to conceptualize God like a Jesus or Vishnu or Buddha or Swami, whomever. It's very hard for my brain to accept an omnipotent power of some sort, that or to accept love from something like that. But in recovery, we are required to have a God of our understanding. We're required to pray and to acknowledge a power greater than ourselves that you can call God. You can call it really whatever you want. But one of the things that helped lead me to a spirituality and an understanding of a higher power was my work with dogs, because I had not felt love in a very long time. And love for myself, love for life, love from other people. There was just a real deficit of love in my life, specifically for myself. And it wasn't until, I started working with dogs and I started to feel that unconditional love, just getting inundated with unconditional love for my dogs. I mean, if you are having a shitty day, if I'm having a shitty day and I check in with Frankie and Cora, it changes how I'm doing. It alters my mood. It allows love in. And that's pretty powerful. If you have dogs are tools that can provide you much needed love and perspective at any time. And that's invaluable.
I mean, I have been on that other side, but there are many people in our society who don't really care about animals, and I have been there. I thought for really the most of my life that it's another thing. It's a burden, something to take care of, maybe dirty or noisy, whatever. I'm busy already. No, thank you. It's another task on my list. And having a dog, it opened another dimension to life. I told you I'm from Germany. I now live in Switzerland, and we tend to approach life very mentally, a little bit disconnected about planning, like our things, whatever. It's different in Mexico though. But so to me, there was a disconnection to this dimension of life, and a doggy, our doggy was he opened up this exponential
We say that dogs are medicine. That dogs are medicine. They help cure any number of afflictions dealing with like the head and heart disconnect, or dealing with self-love, or just a lot of different things. I mean, just in my own life, when I got out of the hospital, I couldn't face the world. I couldn't leave my house. I was just terrified. And my dog basically made me leave the house. You know, they made me get out. And when I couldn't feel love for myself, they made me feel love for myself. And when I couldn't connect to the present and I was only focusing on potentially dying and all the things I had done in the past, they made me be present, you know, on my walks and made me plug into the here and now. So they've just along the way done so many things to help me where I couldn't help myself, you know.
And one thing I wanted to ask you too, so you mentioned that usually incarcerated people are leaving finally prison, they go back to society, the percentage of those who return to prison is quite high. How is that different to those who finish your program?
We have 0% recidivism.
Is it?
No, nobody has gone back to prison.
Oh, okay.
Not one that I know of. And we stay in touch with everybody. So as far as I know, nobody's gone back to prison. And that's like 50 or 60 people.
Okay, so obviously that indicates for quite some effect of your program.
Yeah.
I'm curious to hear, like, how big or how, like, with how many people are you working right now? And also, what's your vision? Like,
well, right now we are, you know, COVID slowed everything down. So 2 of our programs stayed open throughout COVID, North Kern State Prison and Bakersfield Juvenile Justice. The other programs shut down. The other programs are opening back up now, which is great. But the goal, so in the United States of America, we have animal where dogs are put to sleep. Just about every community has a prison where people are warehoused for crimes. Those inmates don't have a lot of hope for life on the outside. They're not being provided with much programming. Those dogs don't have a lot of hope depending on what their situation is. We're spending a lot of money to warehouse dogs and to euthanize them. We're spending a lot of money to warehouse people and not really give them much hope. So why not combine the 2 ideas and help combat, you know, animal euthanasia, dog euthanasia, cat euthanasia, and also provide a way up and out of this cycle of incarceration for a whole lot of people, a whole lot of families. So the program, I'm not going to say could be, the program should be in every prison in the United States. And there's no reason why it couldn't. It would be very easy with the infrastructural support, which is really just money, to establish this program in literally every facility throughout the United States. I mean, we have something like 30 something prisons just in California, and each one of those prisons holds thousands of people. So there's, you know, it's a tremendous amount of people that are locked up and incarcerated. And look, I mean, the pet industry really needs trainers. It is the number one profession that they're coming up short. They don't have enough. And so a lot of dogs are being taken back to the shelter because there aren't enough qualified, like why so many people train with Caesar and at TCW, like your wife, is because there's so much opportunity within that work right now. It's critically important. Normal obedience trainers, that doesn't do anything for what we're dealing with. Shelter dogs who have trauma and behaviors that are preventing them from being adopted. You know, they have dog reactivity. There's all kinds of issues. So trainers with a lot of experience are required for this. And our guys get a lot of that experience because they're training with shelter dogs the whole time they're incarcerated. So yeah, this should be in every prison in the United States, period. And it could be relatively easily.
And from what you shared before, in terms of numbers, how much it costs to maintain or to facilitate one person per year in prison, it seems to be even a solution which might save a lot of money, right? Because
yes, that's a very wonderful German way to think about it. And that's exactly how we should be thinking about it, is that, you know, for what it costs to incarcerate one person, why don't we put that money into these programs, because their recidivism rate is 0 compared to normal prison, which is 70%. So why not put funds into these programs? But convincing people of that is another story. We've done a great job, you know, so we have the support we need, and we're only getting more and more and more support. So who knows, man, one of these days, I think really all it takes is a group of, you know, one very powerful person or a group of influential people to say, they're onto something here. We need to expand on this. Let's give them the help they need. And we could be there, because really all you need are trainers, dogs, and our curriculum. And then voila, you have a prison program. I mean, you have to know how to present it. You have to know how to teach it. We have a lot of homework. We have a lot of, the weeks are laid out. There's a lot of stuff going on, but we can do it in every facility. We just need the financial support. And a place like TCW, like Caesars and the Dog Psychology Center, is another place that could produce a lot of the trainers that we need. Because really the only deficit that we have right now is trainers. We need qualified trainers who could teach the program.
Okay,
and, yeah.
Would have been a question I wanted to ask. Like, what resources are you looking for? What is needed to?
Yeah, the biggest one is trainers, is money and trainers. So with the proper amount of financial support, we can do two things. One is create a train the trainers course at our ranch, where we bring people like yourself or your wife to learn how to train the program in prison. We also bring some of our graduates so that those graduates can learn how to train the program. So the biggest hope is that we have our formerly incarcerated trainers go back inside to open up these prison programs. So we're actually employing formerly incarcerated dog trainers to go open programs up all over the United States. So that's the goal and the dream. And we can do that. We could probably team with Caesar in some way to work on a training curriculum to create trainers. But right now we do it, in the prison environment. Up to this point, a trainer who's interested in the program has to shadow another trainer in prison to learn how it goes. But obviously that's not efficient enough of a way to produce trainers. We have to get people some experience on the outside and really start to create more qualified trainers who can run the program.
And the program is funded solely by donations?
Yeah.
Or how does it work?
Yeah, it's solely by donations, and it costs about $50K to run one program for a year. So we could do 30 dogs. That's 3 rounds, 3 14-week long rounds. So we could do, essentially 30 dogs and 90 student inmates for $50,000. So that's 52 weeks roughly. Okay,
that's $500 per person, right? Something like
that. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yep. So it's very possible and easily probable.
And possibly that is also something which would be very useful and helpful in other countries, right? All around the world.
Totally. Yeah, a lot of interest from Great Britain, from Australia. We've had some interest. Nowhere in mainland Europe or Western Europe, but Great Britain and also Canada. Yeah. So who knows? There's definitely a possibility. This type of rehabilitation is, and also if you think about animals, the shift towards dogs is taking place all over the world. So that same shift towards, like, the same shift that happened for you personally is happening for a lot of people around the world. A lot of cultures are accepting, like the rescue dog. Rescue dogs are becoming more of a mainstream part of society.
Yeah. Well, Zach, this was really a wonderful conversation, and hopefully you inspired quite some people out there about what you do and our wonderful companions. Is there something you want to share to our listeners?
Oh, I just appreciate you, man. You have a great energy. You got a great smile, you great engagement, and I talk too much.
Thanks to our doggy.
You're great with that, man. So thank you. I'm just grateful to be able to reach a new audience and to get to share about some of these things. And if folks want to get involved, they can go to Marleys Mutts Dog Rescue on Facebook or Marleys Mutts on Instagram. Pawsitive Change has its own page. So at Pawsitive Change Program, PAWSITIVE, because everything in the pet world has to be a funny word, like positive instead of, and then I'm just Zach Skow, ZACHSKOW. My last name is Danish, in case you're wondering. And
Yeah. Just to let you know, I will add all the resources, all your information in the show notes of this episode. So everybody is very much invited to learn more about what you do and follow you and your work and possibly also support it. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. You did great, man. I really appreciate it. That was awesome. And your English is tremendous.
Likewise, yeah. It was, to me, it was as a service. Yeah, I was just sitting here and listening to you. Wonderful. Thank you so much for inspiring us here.
Dankeschön. Thank you, man.
Yeah, thank you all for watching this and being with us, being open, curious, and appreciating our little doggies. Yeah. See you next time. Yeah, goodbye.